almost the same.
You
thing,
must have brought the
actually.
It's
refreshments
7:30, so
today.
we'll go ahead and get started now.
Yes.
For the new faces here tonight, you might be wondering, what is noetic science?
Good.
The formal definition is that noetic science is a multidisciplinary field that brings objective scientific tools and techniques together with subjective inner knowing to study the full range of human experience. Now, the full range of human experience includes things like consciousness, obviously, but it extends to extraordinary human capacities, including things that might be considered paranormal or supernatural. Now, the Arlington group here is a local chapter of the Worldwide Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is headquartered in California.
Wow.
And we meet once a month, except for July, on the first Tuesday of the month. Now, some topics that we've discussed in the past few years included, but aren't going to be limited to, sleep and dreams, animal consciousness, artificial intelligence, extrasensory perception, the evolutionary nature of morality and aggression, near-death experiences, intentionality, visual illusions, Sikhism, shamanism, Sufism, pantheism, Buddhism, Rosicrucianism, your ism of choice, basically.
All the isms we can think
All
of.
the isms, yes. If you have a particular topic of interest, or if you'd like to suggest a presenter or be a presenter, let us know. Okay. The meetings are free to all, but if you'd like to make a donation to help us keep the lights on, we do have a can in the back table, which I noticed Gregory's already been sitting around the room. Okay. We do have a can on the back table for love offerings. If you'd like to get on our emailing list, please sign the sheet. I assume we have a sheet going around?
It's right here.
That's going around, don't worry, we're not going to be selling your information to any corporation or anybody else. Okay. Ellen, are there any other announcements?
Just a Treasury Report. We have $212 in the cash box. The rent's paid through March. We pay the church rent to be able to enjoy this. It's a perfect venue, and we're grateful, so we want to help pay the bill. So that's been paid through March. I pay it quarterly, and we're doing okay. We're happy to see everybody. Should we introduce ourselves? Some people are new to me.
Why not? These three are the meditation crew. Let them start.
That's why we're new. We've been meditating, and we're new. We've been
Yeah, y'all really loud
January.
too, buddy.
So, yeah, we decided that maybe sometimes we will come into this meeting because we'll be meditating. But we can meditate through a lot of stuff.
This is Martha Dodgen.
Oh,
We
I'm
went to
Martha
high school
Dodgen.
together.
Yeah.
We met each other after about 40 years, you know. Yeah. And that's Kevin Latour over there. This is Mark. What's your last name, Mark? Howell. Mark Howell.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing Zen meditation as three, inviting people in for
2
close
years.
to 3 or
2.5 years.
2.
Cool.
once a week for over 2 years.
So if the other 3 weeks of the month you want something to do on Tuesdays,
We
you
know
can come
what
in here,
that
they open the door at 7 and they start meditating at 7:15. Sometimes they have a little Dharma talk. Yeah, in the back, yeah, they meet in the back
Well,
where it's
we've been
comfortable.
meeting in the little room.
It's free.
Yes.
David's a first-time visitor here, over there.
My name's David. Nice to meet you all.
You with the church, or did you find out a meetup, or how did you
Meetup.
find us? Oh, okay, yeah.
Cool.
Because our meetup group, we're sharing with the UU Church.
Yeah, you're under our umbrella, but
Yes.
you're on our calendar, and it's gonna go out to every one of the UU fellowship meetup people. So any of your other meetup people, the regular Noetic Science people, they could join the UU thing. They're also gonna get other bulletins. You know, like they'll be hearing that Timothy is gonna be talking next Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning
Wow.
on,
Something.
Sensation, qualia, and the hard problem of consciousness.
right, so he's graced us with his presence from time to time, and we hope it becomes a more regular thing. And it seems to be more regular right now, that's
It's
great.
becoming that way, yes. Sensation, what?
And on this side of the room, we should also share who we are.
Of course.
So, Doris,
I'm D.L. Brooks.
John Stewart. And my mother's kind of been a part of this for many years, so.
she didn't feel like coming tonight, so she's a missing in action, but she's another piece of the puzzle.
I'm Tim Sullivan.
Patricia.
Sullivan, they go together. or at least they come together. I'm Ellen, and I've been part of that Noetic group for a real long time, and have found great inspiration in the things we've shared here, so I'm
Cool.
grateful.
Laura Wineski.
Gay Downs.
John Blair.
I'm Josie Matthews, and I got so much out of it, and then I stopped coming, and then I had to come back because I miss it.
Good for you.
Like how we got a rhythm going for a bit. Just like da-da-da. So, and I do that.
Okay, so what next? Moving along.
Yes, moving along. Our speaker tonight is Gregory Ellis. He is a student explorer of consciousness. For part of his background, he was son of Jason Ellis, who was a physicist, and Catherine Ellis, who was a mathematician. So he has a lot of good applied science in his background. His parents, by the way, were among the founding members of this church. Okay, so he has a long history here. And they also attended the Noetic science meetings back in the day. Ellen might even have known him. He's a practitioner of Tai Chi Chuan, student of Taoism and natural philosophy, and an amateur polyglot and anthropologist. And he's going to talk to us tonight about, I don't know your title.
The current hemorrhage of consciousness and some available remedies. I was going to present you with a printout. That didn't work. No apologies, it just didn't work. Okay. I wish it did, you know, but I'm going to read a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit, and then I'm also going to try to get feedback from you because I'm still studying the idea, even though I started with a big flow chart like this at home, and then I reduced it down to about a third to like present this. So I wanted it to be workable and also give time for other people to talk about things, because some of this might jog something in you, something that I missed, something that should have been obvious and glaring to me, which is kind of like that, why you invite a consultant to come, because somebody from out of town comes and tells you what you're already supposed to know, and then you say, aha, they're so clever. You know? And then you go out and do half of it, and the other half you forget about, right? So, our consciousness is the totality of many things occurring simultaneously or in a cascade. We're not aware of or able to observe some of these elements. If you can't hear me, I can get louder.
I hear you, so I know you're louder.
Yeah,
It's good.
I'm not half deaf.
But from what we are aware of, and what we may infer, various theories and just popular notions have arisen. In attempting to define mind, intelligence, and consciousness, we have collaterally attempted to influence, control, or direct, enhance, or augment, and also safeguard or support consciousness. In some ways, we have been successful in this, while still not fully defining consciousness. Sometimes, when I can't see the forest for the trees, I focus on just one tree. So in this forest of ideas about consciousness, I'll focus on the reality of psychosoma. Here and now, for the sake of time, I am not willing to argue the case of whether mind and body are necessarily coincident, as in one item, or whether they are separate, being two different things. They appear, for most intents and purposes, to operate as a single system. Let's move on to considering some notions which may be scientifically tested, or merely seen as time-tested, or perhaps intuitive. Some are familiar, some seem obvious, and to some folks, others will seem outlandish, unheard of. Here, a disclaimer and a warning. Each of us is a closed neural network, which innately prizes efficiency. The paths that are frequently fired in our brains grow and remain strong and familiar, while those paths used infrequently and rarely suffer from disuse and eventually become undone and fragmented. Effectively, as our consciousness does utilize our brains and nervous systems, as time passes, the spectrum or bandwidth, and I put these in quotation marks because we're not using the normal terms, spectrum or bandwidth of consciousness available is narrowed. Side note, human society and collective consciousness seems to function as a closed neural network as well. We all experience the world differently due to the difference between our spectrums of consciousness. Just as some can hear frequencies or see farther or discern color or ambient temperatures that others cannot, so too is our understanding varied. As our understanding defines our world, it also defines us. I believe that true objectivity flows from critical subjectivity. This means that I must critically view the instruments at my disposal for discovering and revealing my world. My psychosoma is my toolbox. No matter what ideas or phenomena I encounter, what I take away is critically dependent on the functions and sensitivity of my instruments. Yes, even Stephen Hawking is a psychosoma, though some view him as more of a psycho. In my view, awareness is rather dependent on overall health, mental health, and psychosomatic synergy. If the brain and nervous system is impaired, how can we say that awareness is not? If the body is not properly nourished, not properly hydrated, not properly oxygenated, not devoid of toxins or inflammation, not well rested and not well exercised, how can it fully support brain functions? Inflammation and statin drugs are two reasons for acceleration, for acceleration of some cognitive decline and dementia. It appears that high cholesterol actually protects the brain, strangely enough. So you can go see the studies on this, okay? I'm not going to reference very many studies at all in here, okay? I'm going to leave you with search items.
The Grain Brain's a good starting place.
Right.
The what?
There's a book called Grain Brain about cholesterol.
Good, and that's what the feedback, that's what our discussion is about, because some people have really researched certain corners of this, okay? And I'm just like trying to spread the whatever out, right? Spread the confusion out. Yes, that's it.
Holistic.
Right. So consuming inflammatories like turmeric, curcumin, and lemons without the sugar. Lemon water is good, okay, because sugar is an inflammatory, okay, is not wasted, okay, and there's a lot of collateral benefits to both lemons and turmeric, okay, if you want to read about them. And a little bit more on what we eat. Recently, some reports have made the news, and this is just in the last 2 weeks. I just picked some headlines and some key sentences that occurred with them. Here's a sample. All of these are searchable, okay? What I really wanted to print out for you today was to give you these titles, because you could type them in like that and you go straight to the report. But if you type in something close in your query will probably be good enough, okay? The first one, eating mushrooms may dramatically cut risk of cognitive decline. Byline was, researchers find that seniors who ate mushrooms twice weekly had 50% reduced odds of having mild cognitive impairment.
Is that regular mushroom?
They tested 4 kinds. They had 4 kinds. Shiitake was one of them. I thought shiitake was going to be the one. Recently, I brought some black mushrooms back from Thailand, and they're supposed to be really good at producing an oxygenated tea, oxygen-rich tea, and I'm drinking those in the morning, okay? And So, we'll see, you know.
But you did not list the magic mushroom.
No, it wasn't one of those magic ones. These are conventional, regular food, nutrition mushrooms.
It was at the grocery store.
Exactly.
The magic mushroom.
Or white cheese mushroom.
But that's a legitimate question.
A lot of people are saying microdosing magic mushrooms is the way to live.
Microdosing a lot of things might be good for us, but, you know, I don't think all the research is in on some of these things yet. You can't believe the homeopathic medicine until you've backed it up with some modern day research, you know. But it's worth experimenting, I think. Where was I? Okay. Okay, after that, the second headline is researchers find, and I like this, a lot of these things are not surprising at all, okay? And researchers find a Western style diet can impair brain function.
That explains.
Byline
It
was,
does explain
right.
what.
After a week on a high saturated fat diet, high added sugar diet, volunteers scored worse on memory tasks. Okay. The third headline.
Actually, before we move to
Yeah,
the third,
good.
actually, do you want discussion intermittent, or do you want us to hold to the end?
If you've got a byline or comment, I'm welcoming it right now, okay? Because there's enough stuff here, we might lose track of it if we wait too long.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so if you want to bust in, bust in.
Okay. Yeah, there's a book that came out a couple of years ago, I think it's out in paperback now, called The Hacking of the American Mind.
Oh,
And it talks explicitly about how the addition of processed sugar to many of our foods is linked to problems with the dopamine neurotransmission system and the serotonin system. And that has implications for our learning, our memory, as well as some of the confusion
Behavior.
between sort of pleasure and happiness.
I see, yeah. That's worth it, okay?
So, yeah.
And there should be a lot of studies on sugar out there, for sure.
There's-
Sugar and alcohol and a few other things, there's a lot of studies on them, you know.
Yeah, but unfortunately, at least according to this particular book, which is fairly well documented, the addition of processed sugar has occurred in many foods where you wouldn't expect it to be at all.
Right.
And it has been done deliberately to addict us to those types of foods.
Yeah, because you learn instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
Market on that. Hello.
Exactly.
Sorry I'm late.
No problem. Which, you know, there are a couple consequences of that. One is that there's profit motive. So if you're listening to their product, you're going to keep buying it.
That's right.
But then if you also overload your cognitive system with sugar, you're going to burn out your dopamine system.
Wow.
Which is going to lead to impaired cognitive functioning, as well as depression.
Which means you won't be able to discern what a good diet or a bad diet is after a while. You just
Well, you won't care.
You won't care, right? They put sugar in baby food. They add sugar to baby food, so you're better if you make your own baby foods, which a lot of people do if they can, you know, because that starts the jag, right there. The 45-minute sugar jag,
Oh, yeah.
instant gratification.
About 10 years ago, I came across an article in that great scientific journal, Men's Health. No, actually, it was a pretty good article because they had sat down and had an interview with a guy that said sugar, fat, and salt. They've been putting those in foods forever, deliberately, to get people hooked on them. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
deliberately. They start with children's food, they put it in restaurant food, which we're all aware of, but they do that everything, you know, just to try to get us hooked deliberately, just as much as they do with cigarettes or anything else. It was an interesting eye-opening article. I've copied it off because I've used it.
Yeah.
And
But
about
in
30
addition-
years ago, there was a study of guys leaving prison. They started them in the prison on really healthy food and then tracked them when they left. And one group stayed on healthy food and the other group went back to the sugar, salt, and fat. And the recidivism was like
Oh, wow.
90% of the guys who had the crappy diet, and the guys who had healthy diets felt better, behaved better, thought more clearly.
Makes sense.
Died in jail? Where was
They,
that?
this was a study, it was not just a,
They had a budget for it because of the research grant.
thank you.
You know what I mean? So
And they
they
could
could bring in their own
control
cooks and
the
bring in their own
It's a
food.
research project, not just
Okay.
a standard
The
population.
prisoners probably hated it.
There was
Healthy food? What's that?
Well, that's the question then, is how long have humans been adding sugar and salt to their diet?
Since the beginning, because when you're starving, if you just have a bowl of rice and you've got some oil and some salt, you've got a meal that will keep you going till the next day.
Okay, because some of the comments that I've been hearing, it sounds like they. Well, who are they? I think they is us, right?
You're right,
And
we
it's
are
not like
them.
some foreign
Well,
entity,
well,
it's
food
some
is-
corporate conglomerate got together.
We haven't always added processed sugar and corn syrup to our food. They did
Well, now that may
a-
be
a-
true, but
a
humans have been
research
eating
on
sugar
Native
and salt.
American tribe where half the tribe stayed on the farm and grew their own food. And the other half had the casinos, and they had endless supply of money and greasy, deep fried food and sugar. Well, 40% of them on the casino land, 40% were getting dialysis, which they could afford because they were wealthy from the casinos. No, 0%, uncountable needed dialysis that were growing their own food.
I think
So
it's
we haven't always added processed sugar.
our metabolism enjoys glucose.
But
And
usually we
the
get
faster it
from
can get the
natural source.
glucose, the more it enjoys it, once you get hooked on it. Rice, white rice, breaks down pretty darn fast. You eat a meal, you're hungry 3 hours later. It's almost like eating sugar. Now, rice is still good because it doesn't have gluten and this and that and something else. And, you know, and it can improve your digestion over just eating a bag of sugar, right? So, and rice grows everywhere, and it's labor-intensive crop where if you put 3 more people out in the rice paddy, you can grow enough food to feed 3 more people. Okay, so we became addicted because we evolved to eat these grains, you know? And so, yeah, it's in our nature already. So we need protection from ourselves, but these corporations are capitalizing on what's in our nature already.
There was a study, sorry to interrupt. There was a study that was published in The Lancet, which is a British journal of medicine, that was published just recently here, that was talking about those who are severely overweight, their taste buds, they don't, one of the reasons they put so much sugar and salt in the stuff is their taste buds are dulled to a certain extent.
And the lack of dopamine also does the same thing, right? It doesn't
Basically, it takes
register.
away the pleasure of eating.
Right. See,
So you have to add more and more sugar to compensate for the lack of pleasure that you have. I mean, if you look at the traditional hunter-gatherer diet, okay, there was relatively little sugar in it,
Right.
and not a lot of fat.
They didn't eat grains yet
Yeah,
either.
so we crave those foods.
And the
We still
fruits were
have-
complex sugars, and that was a little bit sweet, but it wasn't
Difference.
white
Right.
sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah, we still have those cravings, but when we look at what we eat now, we eat far too much sugar, far too much fat, far too much salt. We still have the cravings, but we don't really need that much because our diet has too much as it is right now. But evolutionarily, that wasn't the fact.
Does anybody want a cookie, by the way?
I got some chocolate too.
Okay.
Say chocolate?
Third headline, and this is one worth looking up for your own information, and it's not very complicated, but the headline is 3 things that brought this woman back from Alzheimer's. And her son created a program, and he did a lot of studies and stuff like this, just what was research was out there. And basically, I'm not gonna give you the byline, but what they said, eating certain things, not eating certain things, and engaging in certain activities. Those were the 3 things, okay? If you want to look it up, you can look it. And we're going to, the diet elements are also in other articles too. Number 4, the brains of people addicted to their smartphone physically change shape. Similar, in the byline is similar patterns of decreased brain activity and trends in dwindling gray matter have also been recorded in the minds of drug addicts.
Well, both of those deal with instant gratification.
What about the drug addicts on their phone all the time?
Double whammy. Cucaracha. And the last one of these titles, which is one we hear all the time, this title is Eat Mediterranean Diet for a Healthier, Younger Brain.
Okay.
All right? And these are just a few of the current ones I read in the last 2 weeks, okay? And there's more and more stuff like this. And most of these places, articles will reference the research, okay? If you look carefully, they will reference research where it came from if you want really hard, cold facts. If they don't tell you up front, right in the article, how many subjects there were and who did the study. Okay, moving on. smart drugs and brain supplements are worth investigating. Drugs like
Acetylcholine.
yeah, right. Acetylcholine have a lot of information available, including possible side effects. Okay.
Which, by the way, in the brains of Alzheimer's, their acetylcholine is reduced by about 90%. So that's a critical component of normal brain functioning.
Right, and you can get the precursors of this, you can buy them online, okay? You don't have to go get a prescription for them. You can buy them online, you can do the research, and get these products online. And I've had testimony from a friend of mine who did it, and he said they worked so well, he only felt like taking them once a month. He was a younger guy, though. He was in his 40s. He said he had really vivid dreams the day after he took them, but his mind felt sharper for a week or so afterwards. It felt like he was functioning faster.
But he's
Okay.
taking like a supplement that he purchased. Choline.
Yeah.
Acetylcholine.
Or is it just mostly acetylcholine?
Well,
It's got-
acetylcholine is the name of the neurotransmitter.
Right.
And you're talking about some chemical precursors that if you take them, your body will then turn into acetylcholine.
Right.
Okay.
And acetyl-L-carnitine is one that he recommended. Okay, that's just the name of the drug, and you can get it. If you look up smart drugs, this one is going to loom above the others, and then also the research has accumulated on that. Okay, so you can check it out and see if it's for you or not. And then there are the supplements like ginkgo biloba, and they have a paucity of scientific evidence, but they probably won't hurt you. Okay, if you take it,
Are you saying ginkgo isn't all? I've heard it is.
We hear a lot of things, but apparently I couldn't find very much research that proved that it was a mind stimulant, okay, or that it toned up the mind. But there's people that will take it anyway. It's part of a battery of things they're taking, okay?
I did.
Yeah, there should just be a word of caution. For supplements, at least in this country, items can be marketed as supplements without going through full FDA testing.
Right.
And for the validity of the claims, those don't necessarily have to be tested either before the items are marketed.
True.
So take them, well, I almost said take them with a grain of salt.
Leave the salt out and just take them with a grain, right?
Take them with a grain of salt.
Remain skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, but and there's other things that are going to present themselves as brain supplements, okay? But batteries of things together. Some of these are really good because they're actually anti-inflammatories, okay? They're legitimate anti-inflammatories, and they will increase the circulation, the oxygenation to the brain, okay? So in that sense, they probably do work, okay? But so do regular anti-inflammatories tend to do that, okay? And some anti-inflammatories have these anti-inflammatory cocktails that we're speaking, sometimes have other collateral benefits, okay, if you read about the ingredients in it, okay? Now, there are external factors eroding our mental function, but short of living in a Faraday cage or in the remote wilderness, there may not be much we can do, okay? Let's move on to consider what we can do about our mental activity and our view of the world around us. One component of general intelligence is memory. Another is the capacity and habit of noticing things, simple, subtle, sublime, or even disturbing. Another component is the ability to analyze and make inferences, interpolate, and predict. Okay? For things like memory, noticing, analyzing, inferring, there are exercises and behaviors which will enhance these. Many are an integral part of child development, both natural and orchestrated child development. In addition, there are various techniques and systems available to correct and improve our thought processes and our neuroplasticity. I won't endorse or critique any of these, either scientific or time-tested institutions. All are worth investigating, okay? Things that we ourselves can do in modest steps to train up and to defrag our minds are many. I'll share a handful of ideas that I've gleaned from readings, from teachers, and experiences. None of these are my inventions, and some are common sense. We're going to address ears, eyes, cognitive habits, and braiding the psychosome. Ooh, braiding the psychosome. The eye is
Mind-body continuum.
the eye is the window of the soul, Proverbs 30:17. But I read another article. Psychologists have determined that this is not far from the truth. The movement of the pupils alone is indicative of various thought processes and emotions. And they measure that and they can use it, okay? They've got enough data on that, okay? So what's going on in your eyes is an indication of what's going on within, you know? So when we see somebody with dull eyes, they are kind of out to lunch, right? You know, the lights are on, but, right?
And being a little more specific with some of that too, when people look at something that they find very attractive, but that they like, the pupils expand, almost as if they're trying to take in more light, absorb more of it. When a person looks at something that is repulsive, the pupils tend to constrict, as if they're trying to sort of not see it. So, yeah, the size of the pupil, along with things like skin conductivity, heart rate, and so forth, all those sort of automatic neural functions do give an insight into what people are feeling. Now, sometimes they don't even necessarily consciously realize it yet. You can get these kind of dissociations between what somebody will tell you or, you know, will tell you about what they feel versus what their physiology is telling you.
There's an energy thing that happens with eyes. I mean, you can feel people through their eye connection to you.
Yeah, well, one of the studies that I think it was Sheldrake did a few years ago was controversial at the time, but he's had people in different rooms. And in one room, a person would look at a monitor on somebody else. Okay? And then the person that was in the other room would have to say when they were being looked at and when they weren't. And they were able to do that at an above chance level. Not perfect, but at an above chance level, suggesting there was some kind of connection going on. And it wasn't even line of sight and direct, because they were in different rooms.
But it was
non-local
non-local
monitor.
energy.
Yes.
Okay. Carlos Castaneda's Don Juan recommended looking at things softly in order to understand them better. Looking softly appears to be identical with the 1,000-mile gaze, which means your eyes are not converging on something. You're leaving your eyes in parallel, or maybe even further out than parallel, okay?
So is that when you can see that there's like certain art that if you have to look at it that way for it to come out?
I'm not sure how that art works, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
don't know
sure.
what to
I think
call
that
it.
works on 2 or 3 levels, okay?
That
But
might be
looking at
what-
it real hard
Doesn't help.
doesn't help.
Yeah.
So you have to relax and you have to like
Yeah, just.
look at it with some fresh eyes or something.
Exactly, exactly.
No, when you're meditating, your eyes are almost going both together and you are nothing, you're doing the opposite when you're looking at somebody or something.
Well, no, in my opinion, in meditation, your eyes do not converge. No.
Well,
You're looking basically at nothing in particular,
Yes.
so why would they focus on
but they
anything?
tell you your eyes should kind of go like,
Some people say you're supposed to look down your nose.
yes,
That's not how I do meditation, I'm
well,
sorry.
but,
I just let my eyes go dull,
yes,
and everything gets fuzzy.
okay.
And the reason I don't close my eyes is because you go to sleep when your eyes are closed for too long. Okay, but I've never heard about, but I've heard that business about looking down your nose.
Yes,
I don't know what that is, but I've never tried that.
but I think I've done it, and to me, it actually helped.
There are a lot of training exercises for the eyes, and there's a lot of meditations based on eye movement. For instance, fire meditation. Meditating on contemplating a candle flame across a dark room. There's a lot of things that you can do with the eyes. And I think that eye exercises, both expanding and focusing, are both necessary. What we tend to do is we tend to focus more. in our life.
The
In our life,
TV is only 6 feet away, the television.
Right. Okay, we're goal-oriented, we're linear, and we focus, okay? And
And it's bad.
we don't relax, and we don't look at things softly, and we don't let me get on to the next step of the eyes.
Actually, with the eyes, it's not that the eyes are causal in this.
No.
The eyes are a tool. If you go with the soft focus, for example, that also tends to lead to more alpha brainwaves.
Exactly.
So by manipulating what you're doing with your eyes, it's not the eyes that's really important here, it's what you're doing with the brain, its receptivity.
Right, exactly,
So whatever
exactly.
works for a person, then, if there's a.
You come to Zen meditation and learn about it.
Okay.
Obviously, focusing the vision narrowly to perceive detail and avoid distraction is a valuable tool. Likewise, widening the field of vision and accessing peripheral vision is another tool. Neglected, though. This tool, like right brain activity, has been and is much ignored and even shunned because it doesn't make you money.
That's right.
Okay? Peripheral vision training has an effect on other processes outside the vision. Like he said, centers in the outside the vision centers in the brain. It's like gives the brain permission, or the brain is taking control and making access to other centers other than dwelling on the vision. Okay? So it's still registering, light and stuff like this and movement and stuff, but it's not being preoccupied with this. Accepting fuzziness in the center of your field of vision is a step toward accepting the value of nonlinear and nonlingual thought. They're parallel. When you want everything to be straight in front of you and comprehensible, but when you accept lack of understanding equally, and you're not scared of it, then I think the brain functions better, okay? Because there's more options, okay? It's good to be very curious and pursue an idea tenaciously, but there's other times when, I can't remember that. You relax, take a nap, and then it comes to you, right?
Yeah, and kind of related to that distinction, you were talking about pursuing an idea, very linear, very linguistic types of processing.
Yeah.
But you can also do a more nonlinear, almost imagistic type of processing. So imagine looking at a picture which all the parts are present at one time. It's all there simultaneously, it's all processed in parallel, versus listening to a sentence, which you have to do sort of word by word by word. It's just a different mode of processing, but the different modes tend to excel in different areas, as it were, or be more useful in certain types of questions.
Right. So, while linear lingual thought is a necessity in many cases, it also can be a massive fetter on our consciousness if we get trapped in it. Okay, and in a lot of ways we get trapped with this one. Things like, so if you limit your time viewing small screens, viewing detailed objects, in any way possible, it's probably good for you because you'll be balancing out your brain activity, okay? Forest bathing, looking at cloudless blue skies with no borders on them. So there's nothing except to open your eyes up to the blueness of it all. Kind of like sitting at the cinema before the movie came on in the old days, you used to have this big blue screen over there and you had no depth perception at all. You just sit there, whoa, for a while and just relax. The blueness of it all kind of got to you, but you lost track. Was it this big? Was it that big? You lost track of it, and because you let go of
that for you.
holding it, yeah. Viewing a large horizon without too many things on it to snatch your mind would be a good thing, like a desert, a real desert. It's kind of like looking at the surface of the ocean when you're looking off a railing of a ship and there's nothing else on the horizon but the water, and you can actually see the curvature of the earth, at that point. That kind of thing, your vision widens if you let it. You can focus on some waves if you want, but if you just let yourself space out so we need to find activities where you can do this, okay? there are some. I'm sorry I couldn't find the study, but I read it 20 years ago. And the guys in there said that, scientists, said that if you sat close to a movie screen, not looking up at it, but like on the 5th row where you could still look relatively straight forward, but that the screen was wide enough that you had to move your eyes to see this corner and that corner clearly, that it stimulated a lot of brain activity, which was exercise for the brain. On the other hand, if you sat at the very back of the movie theater, kind of like you do when you're looking at a TV, it's across the room, your brainwave activity starts to taper off and you focus, you use less and less parts of the brain, okay? And you get narrowed down. Tunnel vision, basically. Thinking becomes tunnel vision too, even without visual thing, okay?
Cell phones are even worse.
Uh-huh. We try to do so many things on smartphones, you know, that we probably shouldn't be doing.
I mean, talk about a narrow focus in your eyes too.
Let's talk about ears. Let's see. Ears matter. Hearing loss and dementia. The silent connection.
What?
There is an article called Hearing Loss and Dementia, the Silent Connection, and there's several reports and studies on this, okay? I'll read the byline on this one report. Scientists are finding more and more evidence that trouble with hearing makes you more likely to go on to have dementia, a condition marked with memory loss, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we've heard all of this stuff, okay? But the reasons for this are in 3 areas. Feeling isolated, working harder to process, getting fewer signals to the brain, which leads to the brain declines. Just like we said, if you don't use those neural pathways, they start to disconnect, okay? And also, not to mention, arriving at erroneous translations or interpretation of what is going on around you, and then getting bad feedback, or getting upset
I
Yeah,
know,
by the
mad as
bad
hell.
feedback.
divorces that have happened because of
Right.
loss of hearing.
All of this is sort of challenging your own sanity, basically. And there's nothing like sowing a bunch of doubt in somebody who's having a hard time figuring out what's going on already and struggling. They can do it if they could, you know, just...
If you just talk louder.
Right. Exactly.
See, whereas I consider it one of my strengths when I'm deaf is that if I can't understand what you're saying, I get to make it up. And I can be quite creative.
So much.
I don't dislike anybody, I just,
You know,
You're scaring me there, man.
Right. Now, some hearing disability or impairment cannot be helped a lot. Some can be helped, although we have many reasons for why we won't do it. Vanity is one.
hear better, why we don't do something.
We don't want to
about
wear a
it.
hearing aid because it looks funny.
I'll be an old man if I
Or
do that.
the sound that comes through the hearing aid is raspy, and it doesn't sound the way it's supposed to sound.
No, I'm just fortunate my audiologist can fix my ears.
But
And then I can hear it, it's always at an inopportune time. I couldn't hear for about 3 weeks, and then I went to the audiologist, and she fixed, I get some water buildup on my ears, and I can't hear. And I was coming back on a plane ride, and this woman behind me was talking about how she went hunting and killed animals and skinned them and ate them, and I'm like, I'm a vegetarian, can you shut up? Why can't I be deaf today? Earplugs. Yeah.
the thing is, if listening to something that's raspy and metallic sounding is bad, what about hearing everything as if you're in the bottom of the swimming pool? Okay, isn't that weird too?
Yeah.
That's just as weird, and that's what a lot of people go through. Okay? So you choose one weird over the other, but one weird disconnects you from the world, the other weird jerks you into the world, whether you like it or not. But that's what consciousness is, right? You're in the world whether you like it or not, you know? Now this brings us to the next topic, which is the uncomfortable topic of turning away. We're getting cognitive function in the way we think here, turning away. And there's lots of examples, I'm going to give you a few. one thing decidedly worse or more damaging than being ruled by linear lingual thinking is turning away. Turning away occurs on many levels and possibly 100 times in a day. It's often more subtle than disgust, as in, what's that line? Yellow matter custard dripping from a dead dog's eye. Right? Cuckoo, cuckoo. Right? Right. It's maybe something that's not that revolting, but it's something that you just choose to turn away from. Okay? And it can become a habit. Just because we are closed neural networks, our behavior becomes habitual and it starts to be pervasive. Okay? Here comes the anecdote. My mother, Catherine, exhibited turning away constantly in the years prior to being diagnosed with dementia related to Alzheimer's. She'd be watching TV, and I'd come over to visit and sit down. My father, Jason, would come from his study, and next to her we'd talk about various world affairs, and many of them lamentable, but intriguing nevertheless. Catherine's fuse grew shorter and shorter with time, although I didn't connect the change with cognition. But soon, within 1 to 2 minutes of my discussing with Jason whatever the hell was happening, wherever, Catherine would blow up. She'd scream or bellow something like, "Why do you always have to talk about such unpleasant things? Just stop!" After shutting up 4 or 5 times and just sitting there 5 or 10 minutes before leaving, I began to draw Jason outside if Catherine looked agitated. We'd talk outside for a bit, and then I'd depart feeling satisfied. Jason never turned away. Not even from his own death. Oh yeah, he fought it. But when it came, he was resolved and his bags were packed. And he was lucid. My poor mother, Catherine, turned away from everything eventually, including breathing. Statins probably didn't help either, which my father observed. Okay. So when we turn away, we cut off possibilities. When we mutter ridiculous, impossible, unthinkable, we narrow our field. We do what closed neural networks are inclined to do if left to their own devices, without disturbing external stimuli. I find myself guilty of multiple turning away. Some I can do, some I can reverse. I can act against. But others I'm unconscious of. I've already done them, and they're done, and they're gone, and I didn't even notice it, okay? And those, every one of those is a lost path for me, for my thought processes. Somehow, okay, next. Sometimes looking softly is good. Sometimes focusing is good. Sometimes dualism works. Sometimes dualism is a wall or a megalith crushing our consciousness. I must learn to suspend judgment. I'm working on myself. Otherwise, I remain homo hapless, a victim of my own ever-narrowing field of vision. I must suspend belief and suspend disbelief. There is no best, there is no worst. Avoid speaking and thinking in truisms and slipshod generalizations. Avoid speaking and thinking in superlatives or absolutes. Freedom and control are both illusions. Never, oh, and here's a little poem by Fritz Leiber from one of his Grey Mouser books. Never and forever are neither for men. You will come back again and again. I don't know if reincarnation exists, but the idea of never and forever being words that should be banned from our thought processes is not a bad idea.
Absolutely.
You know?
You want to
Absolutely. You're terrible.
Oh, I'm just getting warmed up.
Okay, so what I do for myself, forest bathing, cooking, braiding the psychosoma. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Braiding the psychosoma, like braiding two pieces of rope together, right? Okay, I do forest bathing, I cook, I bicycle, anything that involves the mind and body in a little bit of an intensity. I train in Tai Chi Chuan, which is a moving meditation. So you're moving and you're relaxing and you're observing yourself move. Okay. I try to open my eyes and ears. Improve cognition by removing barriers and practicing non-dualism, which I mentioned is formidable and undertaking in lifelong pursuit. Okay, you never get there. Okay, but thank God, it's something you can do until they nail the top on the box, practically. Okay. What else would I do with the time I have on my hands? Non-dualism, I think I got a handle on it. Step one. When I saw or perceived something terrible or interesting, I began to respond. That is interesting. Step two. I respond, that is interesting, and did not look away. Step two, I changed that to this is interesting, putting myself next to it. Step three, I said merely interesting, putting myself everywhere and nowhere. Step four, I'm learning to say, whoa, without even making a judgment as to whether it's interesting or not.
It's almost very Buddhist.
It's also, I got it from Keanu Reeves, man.
But isn't the way you say whoa and the use of the word whoa in fact the judgment that you're making?
It's being overwhelmed and wiped off the planet, basically. Blown away. Whoa, it's being
Available to the
blown.
moment.
It's neither good nor bad.
Be excellent to one another and party on, dude.
Right, exactly. All right, I have had my say, and you guys had a little chance to play, but I've got a lot of things that I'd like to hear from y'all.
Yeah, well, I would like to question two of your basic assumptions.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
The first one is, you've talked about us as closed neural networks. Why do you think we're closed?
Because we love efficiency. The brain loves efficiency.
But the mere fact that we have sensory organs that are open to information from outside suggests that we're more of an open processing system and not closed. If we were closed, we would only have feedback from within ourselves. There would be no capacity of learning new things. Now, that would be much more limited. But I would suggest that maybe we think of ourselves more as an open system rather than a closed system. And here's an analogy. With a closed system, you've got entropy, psychological thermodynamics. Okay. If the Earth was just in a void with nothing else around it, everything would run down to heat death. But the Earth is not a closed system because we have the sun. The sun is constantly putting energy into the Earth. The Earth is radiating sun.
Right.
Now, because it's an open system with information coming in, Earth flourishes. I would argue that our individual neural systems are open in the same sense. We have new information coming in that allows us to flourish. Now, if we cut that off, if we become a closed system, then we go into decline and we will stop flourishing. We will have the equivalent of heat death. So given that, do you still maintain the word closed neural systems?
Well, it may be a poor choice of words, but I'm thinking of this scene from Down the Rabbit Hole. When they relate that the shaman could see the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria floating out there, but none of the tribe could see it until the shaman smacked them, gobsmacked them, and then they could see them because they were outside of their reality. So I think we tend to define our reality, and anything outside of it is just out of the question.
So can I add to that?
Yeah.
It seems like then both views would be operant, so it's closed or can be open. So it's closed if we don't examine our assumptions. If we don't examine our assumptions, then all of our thinking begins with conclusions. There's nothing coming in.
And
We've
being
already
aware
come
of
to a
those,
conclusion.
being aware of the data that we get through our senses. A lot of, the ships on the horizon were not, the shaman's eyes saw him because he was open to the input, but the other people were not, that wasn't available because they weren't paying attention to it.
But were they getting the same input?
That we don't know. But I think back in the days when Gestalt therapy was really on the front lines, the things people discovered when they were confronted with and encouraged to pay attention, be aware, own their experience, reality changed for them. I think it was really sad that people don't use those awareness skills as much, although mindfulness meditation may help put some of that back in place, but awareness is, I think, a key feature here.
Yeah, which actually kind of segues into the second assumption I wanted to place.
Okay.
You seem to be talking about conscious functioning. Okay. But we know that over 90% of what our body does is unconscious functioning. And we know that information can move between the two different levels. When you first learn a skill, for example, you have to have a lot of conscious attention to it, but then once you become fluent in the skill, it becomes automatic. Driving is a good example. When people first learn how to drive a stick, and they concentrate on things. But now driving is automatic, and many people can literally do it in their sleep.
Yes.
So information can kind of move back and forth between conscious awareness or conscious accessibility and non-conscious automatic processing. And I'm kind of wondering how this fits with your idea of bandwidth. Are you thinking of bandwidth as what we can sort of consciously deal with at one time, or are you thinking that it's our conscious, our unconscious, our implicit, our automatic?
Well, I didn't want to get that specific about it, but I'll tell you what, I believe that there are creatures that can see infrared.
Yes.
There are creatures that can see ultraviolet.
Yes.
Okay? Our spectrum is what it is, but there's also people that can't hear from 20 to 20,000 megahertz because of their hearing, right? They've worked around loud machines. And yet there are people that can hear slightly below that and slightly above that even, okay?
Yeah.
I believe that the body actually may have its own sort of consciousness, separate. Sort of like an operating system, a simple operating OS or something for the body, where it experiences something we'd call it a kind of consciousness. It's not as sophisticated as our brain work or our consciously directed mind efforts, okay? But I think it's going on. And I didn't really want to talk about that too much, okay? But I believe it's real because, my studies in Tai Chi and stuff like this give me the opportunity to see my brain's doing all kinds of things, and I'm watching myself doing Tai Chi, and I'm enjoying the watching, and in fact, I'm almost watching myself watch the Tai Chi, So I know that there's a lot of layers going on here. Right, exactly. So I know there's a lot of layers going on here. I was trying to keep it kind of something we could work on in the physical world right away, but there are other exercises that go beyond that. Okay, and other ways of being aware. Hence the experiment with perception and altered states of consciousness that's been going on a lot. Okay, both artificially induced and also self-induced. Okay, vision questing and everything else. Whether herbally aided or otherwise. And fasting. And other things that cause different things, maybe hormonal suppression, stuff like that, allows the brain to, or allows your awareness to expand to other areas. And so I think there's a lot of ways we can exercise and train the consciences, okay? But I was trying to keep things kind of superficial and finite. I admit, you caught me, and I agree with you.
Here's one way that we can make it more kind of mundane and superficial.
Okay.
Okay. You can broaden your bandwidth, okay,
Mm-hmm.
simply by learning about something.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the classic example that you'll come across if you look in psychology textbooks. Chess masters and chess novices would both see a board position. Okay. And then the board would be taken away, they'd begin a blank board, and they'd have to reconstruct what they saw. Okay. The masters could correctly position many, many more pieces than the novices could, as long as the positions were drawn from real games. Okay. If they were just random amounts of pieces, then there was no difference in the number of, random range of pieces. There was no difference in the number of pieces that the masters could correctly put from what the novices could correctly put.
Mm-hmm.
The random arrangement.
No patterns.
Didn't match the mental model they had.
Exactly, it didn't match the mental model. But what that mental model did, though, was in essence increase bandwidth by allowing certain things to be grouped together into single categories. So for example, if you play chess, 3 pawns and a rook and a king, you could call that a castle king. All you have to remember is that one piece of information as opposed to 5 separate pieces of information from different pieces. So by learning new information, cognitively engaging in it, whatever, you're able to, in essence, increase your bandwidth for total information without necessarily changing the overall capacity of the system. So that's kind of a way to cheat these limits. And you see in student learning because, again, if you test the chess masters in non-chess domains, they've got the same kind of learning limits as other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's only within domains of particular expertise where people exhibit these seeming increases in bandwidth.
Patterns that they can identify.
Patterns that they recognize, exactly.
Right, I agree with this, and I believe that there are ways to expand your, quote, spectrum of consciousness or your bandwidth. And a lot of them involve study. Book study, language learning, learning new tasks, learning a new dance step. There's all kinds of ways to learn. And this is what we're left with, okay? We're left with this because we're also combating declination of cognitive ability at the same time. So what you're trying to do is hold your ground and if possible expand your territory, okay? And so I think, yeah, it's great. I mean, I love language acquisition for myself. That's one of my own hobbies. And I think it's probably helped me a little bit. And I've heard that when you get on years and you learn a new language, it also, it helps your cognitive functions, okay?
You're learning different ways of thinking.
For sure.
Because languages are also cultural patterns.
That's true.
That is not equal to the one that you grew up with. So you're adapting. And by doing that, you are creating new connections all the time. So your intelligence is literally growing.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's a bit of kind of an overused metaphor, but think of the brain and cognitive processes as a muscle.
Right.
If you have a muscle and you don't exercise and work it, it atrophies.
And cross-training is even better.
Is even better, exactly.
Right. John?
I was thinking about, talking about deaf people. My father was deaf from early childhood, and he didn't show any signs of brain deterioration until the last 12 months of his life when he was in his mid-70s. How had he not done that? Because he was constantly learning new things all his life.
They just said there's a connection.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't say it applied to everyone, okay?
And I had the experience just today of learning something that has changed forever the way that I look at part of my world. Everybody around here is familiar with what greenbrier is. It's all over the place.
Okay.
Oh, that plant.
Yeah, and it's a part of the world around here in the south. It fills the woods here, it fills most of the woods around here, greenbrier, and how you look at it depends upon what your contact with. Some people think of it as that's greenbrier right there. I was walking around the backyard and got careless. But today my nephew down in Austin, who is an ethnobotanist, posted some photographs of a plant that he didn't capture. And I knew that most of this plant was greenbrier. Then he posted this picture of something that looked like a big chunk of ginger root. Turns out that's what greenbrier's roots look like. And I had gone 79 years almost and not known that until today. I will never look at a greenbrier again the same way. because I've just had some new input. And if you go out and look for new input all the time, I think you will be very healthy for your mind all the time.
I can answer something about the deafness issue, because apparently I've had this issue my whole life, and my sister used to say I had selective hearing. And it wasn't so much selective hearing as that times I would lose my hearing gradually until I realized I was not hearing. And sometimes I just didn't hear what people were saying unless I was looking at them and realizing that they were speaking. So even though I'm like, I hear all the time, what do you mean I can't hear? I play 5 instruments, what am I not hearing? And then to find out I'm deaf, yeah, at times, not always. But yeah.
I don't think, they said, anyway, on the hearing thing, I think that there said there's a connection, okay, that it's not a guarantee, but it's something to consider. You know, if you're fighting against cognitive decline, it might be another tool in your toolbox,
Well, it's
okay?
probably if you were born and you've always heard, just like you've always had sight, and then when you lose it, you might sharpen up other faculties, but you've still lost one of your tools in your toolbox, and it's going to feel like you're going to feel the loss.
There's no doubt that my dad was living in a different world than I lived in.
Yes.
And I never fully realized that until I started losing my hearing when I got older too. And it's when it's gradual like that, you don't realize that your world is changing, because it's not there anymore, and you don't really recognize that it's not there anymore until something happens, like I can't hear a microwave beep. Even when I'm standing right next to it, it can just beep, absolutely. I have 2 alarm clocks in my bedroom. One of them is worthless because I can't hear it.
I can hear better what's behind.
I think the
me.
turning away is more dangerous.
That's what I was thinking the whole time.
And it's the thing we have to look at because it's insidious. When you select your Facebook friends, you turned away.
When you select your Facebook friends, you've turned away.
You've turned away from people that don't agree with you, or that you hate their opinions.
Oh, you mean when you've unfriended and unfollowed others? Wait.
I was saying, not all my friends
I'm
are on
much more
Facebook.
peaceful. I recently started unfollowing all the fundamentalist Christians, and I'm much happier now.
Right.
But you've lost part of your world, though.
You're just not seeing yourself.
If you unfollow somebody,
They can still message me if they want
Yeah.
to.
right, they
I
can
haven't
message you,
blocked
but you know, that's just an example. And they say that we create cliques, social cliques in Facebook and other places,
Well, I was
you
just
know,
gonna do that
of people that
anyway.
agree with us and we agree with them, so we don't hear anything new. That's an active example of the neural network trimming off
being closed.
the pathways that don't seem all that interesting or rarely used.
And we didn't used to be
Like my
able to do
mother.
that so easily.
Well, the ones that piss me off,
Right.
I get sick
Right.
listening.
So turning away is something we have to do a lot of introspection, and you really have, I mean, it's insidious.
It's gotten to where we can't understand large chunks of our society because we now have the option of very easily turning away from them, because we're communicating through electronic media that let us do that just by saying block. And when we were meeting people in person, face to face, in the tribal council or at school or like that, you couldn't do that. These people were still there right in front of you talking to you.
Well, we're living in a culture shift right now too, as sometimes I was talking with Ellen about earlier, and something I was talking about with my brother the other night. You know, I grew up in a society and populated by people that quite often we sat around the kitchen table arguing or, you know, having a heated discussion because we had differences of opinion. But we were still friends and we were still family. You know, we allowed each other to have a difference of opinion. We might get heated about it, but we still respected that we had a difference of opinion. Now you're not allowed to do that. You know, now it's not just getting mad. You're going to hurt each other and expel each other from the country and God knows what else. And it's
They're gonna
just,
shoot you.
yeah.
You were talking about turning away. I'd like you to open that up more. Maybe I missed some of it. But you said that because your mother was turning away all the time.
That was an example.
Is an example, yeah. So is turning away, well, first I wanted to get to what is turning towards like then, but was turning away similar to being indifferent? Is that kind of a turning away?
It may be pretended indifference, but actually it's a little bit stronger than just indifference.
I think of it as
Actually,
it's an
avoiding,
acting- it's an
avoiding
acting-
things that are
Just
uncomfortable.
wanted rejection.
So what
Avoiding,
is-
studiously ignoring.
Yeah, well, that's, you could say that's a way of defining indifference. I mean, with certain.
Well, indifference means you really don't care whether it's is or isn't, right? But when you studiously ignore something, it's like you wish it didn't exist.
I think it's the opposite of indifference. I think it was an effort to shield herself against things she just felt she couldn't deal with
Right.
anymore.
Well, and if we're just running our headlong into things that are uncomfortable all the time, it's counterproductive. I mean, we want to maintain a sense of security in our
Well, when I was
associations.
talking about indifference, I mean it in the sort of sense of not wanting to know also, and so.
Not wanting to know, for sure.
Yeah, and so it's sort of an apathy. But, so what is turning towards then? What would be the
Engaging.
engaging?
It almost
engagement?
sounds like turning toward what makes you uncomfortable, almost sounds like exposure therapy.
So you're vulnerable.
Where you expose yourself to something that makes you uncomfortable, so you
Mm.
Right. They say when people cross their legs toward each other, they are turned toward each other. It's a body thing. It may just be their legs cramped, okay? You know what I mean? Or something like that, or they're itchy to sit on the other side of their other hip, or something like that, okay? But there's a lot of things we do all the time, you know, that could be called turning away or turning toward.
Mm.
There are people that had a very bad experience with religion. And when they grew up, and they turn away from all religion. They won't even walk into this room at all because the outside it says church. They don't care what we're doing in here. It says church outside, they won't come in here, okay? You know?
And on the other hand, there are people that says church, they totally dispel any protective devices or any reason, and they say, it's church, it's good, give me more. And they get hurt.
And we're sitting in a circle this evening, which we don't normally do in this group. We've turned toward each other, quite consciously,
I
I'm
thought we
sure.
were gonna have circle dancing, that's why I stayed.
show your part.
So, yeah, you heard turn toward God. But there's also more capacity, turn away from God,
But
right?
you know, if God is within and without, anywhere you turn, there he is.
Exactly,
There it is,
exactly,
right?
but it's just a word. And
Well-
there's lingual thought again, trapping us. You know, we're getting controlled by lingual thought, you know?
Yeah.
It's possible to turn away.
There's
from
a
God.
relationship therapist, I think his name is, there's several, Hendricks or Harville Hendricks, I think. But I was just reading something about, he could diagnose whether a couple was gonna break up or not in very rapid order by determining if they were turning away or towards each other in their
Exactly.
conversation, so that they were paying attention, listening, you know.
That's where I first heard the term. A long time ago, it was in relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I first heard the term, years and years and years ago, and I said, yeah, well, that's interesting. But then I thought about my mom later, you know, and about turning away from things, narrowing your field of vision down. But let me point out something that's healthy. The fact that people come to a meeting like this, that are interested in noetic science, means they're exercising their cognitive options. They're not turning away from everything. They're turning towards some things, and they've got a mind that's inclined to turn toward things, even strange ideas, even sometimes uncomfortable ideas. So that's a good sign, and even if you do this once a month, it's a pattern that your mind has developed toward inquiring. You know, being inquiring and being engaged and being interested in the world means being more open. Like you said, the network is more open. There's more ways into this network.
Information can come in.
That's right, information can come in, and it's not strictly controlled, you know, like media in China or something, you know. Yes, David.
Well, like when someone gets involved in like a dangerous cult, one of the ways they practice control, like say Jonestown was narrowing those outside sources of input.
You bet.
Kind of source of, they get the group to turn toward each other, and anything on the outside is considered the enemy.
Yeah, yeah. So that's true about lots and lots of things like that, right?
There's a
Lots of groups.
great program last night that I'd seen before on fascism and the rise of it that Rick Steve did several years ago, which you can get as a video. We ought to get it, as a matter of fact, here. But one of the things he points out is that the technique that fascism uses is to get a society to turn in on itself.
Us,
Even if you have to kill everybody that refuses to do that.
right. Us versus them. Okay, well, I've had my say, and it sounds like you've given me a lot of good ideas. I've got some mental notes here, things I want to investigate. I hope that you carry away a few things that you were willing to investigate. And the turning away thing is a thing that just blew me away. And I realized my mother was the prime example of that when I applied it, and I realized that was what was happening. And that behavior bore its own fruit in the end, a very bitter fruit. So if we can find ways to forestall that, more power to us.
I ever since, I wonder if she was hypersensitive, was becoming more and more overly sensitive. And that, so the minute something, a thought, maybe affected her somatically or some way, and then she just, that was her way of protecting, even though it worked against her.
It could be. It could be that,
And I know-
television may have been her opium.
I know your mother was such a competent person when I first met her, and I know what happens to you when you get old and ill. You get to feeling less and less capable of dealing with stress. And I'm sure that's what was happening to her.
And that can happen to all of us.
Right.
You don't even have to be old.
So
You
the
just get
question,
knocked down a few
yeah,
times.
so how would you intervene with something? I mean, that's my next thought on that, would be, how would you,
You can make
And
them
that's
feel loved and
Ellen.
sheltered as much as possible, and that's about all you can do.
Yeah, but maybe if we become a society that looks at those kinds of things and tries to work with them more.
If you recognize it as a possible pre-symptom, then maybe you can begin early treatment, preventive treatment that will forestall the early onset of dementia and push it way back to the end of your life where it belongs,
Because it
okay?
is one of those things that the more you do, the more you're going down that path, right? I mean, the more you
Yeah.
cluster.
Yeah, if I'd known the things I know, and my father had known the things that I've found out now, things could have been a lot different.
Well, I know in his last days, your dad was doing anything but turning away. He was staying involved as much as he could right up to the last.
Yeah, he started with a really
stimulated my
white
brain
man.
today.
Hey, Kevin, what's up?
You stimulated my brain, that's a big mistake.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Now what?
I'm a welder, I live alone, I don't have anyone in my house, I work alone, I'm a welder. So I can become really, what's the word they give sailboatists that goes out, sensory deprived.
Yeah, okay.
And really just live in my own world and not stimulate a single brain cell. And I don't know if you've known this, but until I was about 50, I was a self-centered bastard. I only cared about myself. I ran off the nicest girl you ever met in your life because I was a mean bastard. And I was a dick. And now I'm a sweet, open-minded guy. Anyway, so I started looking into a lot of areas of self-help. And of course, writing a 4th, 5th step, if anybody knows about 12-step programs, I won't get into it. A psychiatrist should be able to do it as well. Just writing your own life story, everything that ever happened, to look at. Then, what's the next step? Well, consciousness is an interesting topic because I didn't know until I got into Zen meditation how much of me, my consciousness, was old stories and tapes playing constantly. And then how much my ego was in charge of everything. And that through denying the ego, actually trying to ignore it, and of course you have to look at it and let it do its thing. And there's multiple parts of me. Let's say there's just two. There's the ego and there's the higher consciousness. Just to keep it simple. And so, through meditation, years and years of meditation, I realized at any given moment I can stop that ego and tell it to shut up. Listen to this other person. And that's not who I was for 50 years of my life. 50 years of my life, I was you, need to listen to me. I will tell you how to live a better life. And it will get better if you do what I tell you. And I don't care what you have to say, I know everything. You can't teach me that. And today I hope I'm the opposite. I'm listening to everybody's input and, well, within reason. I'm pretty fed up with evangelistic Christianity.
Well,
All right.
thing.
And that's all. I know the title had consciousness in it.
Well, I think people have contributed a lot, and there's a lot that we haven't said tonight that's probably resounding in our heads, like mindfulness, quieting that internal constant dialogue of woulda, shoulda, coulda, and I'm gonna do this and that. You know, the quieting of the mind allows more free thought. You're not just repeating these loops, you know, over and over and over ad infinitum, which can really dull you out, okay?
It could waste your whole life.
Exactly, so,
But I think we, you know, it's really fun to share with people who are exploring awareness. Because I've been to lots of people all the time who are totally locked in the kind of place that Kevin was talking about, just totally. And
Television.
yeah, and it's, you know, it's wonderful to share our personal growths in that awareness and the expansion of realizing that we're more than our body, we're more than our ego. I tell people your body's kind of like a little bag you carry yourself around in. You know, it's not you, but you live in it and use it. And egos have a hard time getting used to that idea. But near-death experiences are shedding a lot of light on how much more we are than just our body. When people leave their body and God, there's a really good book that Cindy Weldon, who has come to this group mostly, but in here tonight, she gave me that book for Christmas. It's called Consciousness Beyond Life. And the guy that wrote it is a cardiologist who didn't believe in any of the near-death stuff. He was a very rigid, material, physical, standard
You don't
operator.
have to say that like it's a bad word.
Well, it's different from what he's doing now. It's his way of looking at things. And he said, oh, that's just, you know, the oxygen leaving the brain, blah, blah, blah. But then he happened to come, he was overwhelmed by the story, so he started talking to old patients came back to him, and he said, now, you know, anyway, he learned from patients he'd done surgery on that crap, they had an out-of-body experience, went to the other side and back while he was there, but he never did know about it because he wasn't open to it. So now he quit being a cardiologist and wrote this book, and his whole current life is researching near-death experiences.
How about the memories of the heart donor?
the heart donor?
Yeah. You know, at the beginning of.
All right, Hollywood is
There's a whole
invading.
nother story.
Well, I'm exhausted.
Well, you did a good job.
Yeah,
We all